Idea. All right, welcome to Social Distillation, the submarine still of the internet, where we attempt to drop the bead and pour white lightning straight onto your brain. What are we talking about today, Samo?
Well, it's happy hour, so we got some white lightning, but we've got Path of Daggers. We are continuing on. We're getting to the Perrin storyline. Love it or hate it, we are there. And but I wanted to start like we did last time with comments. Unless there's spoilers, we'll start with the comments first. Now, Scott, I did see you commented on one of yesterday's videos. Uh, I would, he said, locked and loaded to our they're coming for your children. And I would like to continue to have my part of this conversation of like, that is the goal. So be careful with that. You know, that is the goal. The reaction is the goal. And so yes, I understand your sentiment there, but it's just the caution to the audience is please don't actually do anything too rash. Now to the Wheel of Time comments before using the bowl. And yeah, I agree with this comment. Before using the bowl, I think you passed over Elaine's examining the Turing Grail and Ungrail from the Ibudar storeroom. Yeah, we did gloss over that, and that probably was a fumble on our part because it does get descriptive on our talent. We get hints of it with the
True.
with the leash. Her being able to figure that out, but her actually
And then,
getting better at just, hey, this does this and this does this, and okay, this is an Engrill, this is a Turing Grill, and you know the fact that Avienda is there not able to help really. So yeah.
Yeah, and I think we also skipped over where this first comes up, where not just the making of the Adam, but then she makes more of the Dream Tarangreels so that more of the sisters can go into it. It's
And it's also, I liked how Jordan, it's not modern female leads. She didn't get it perfect.
no,
She there was actually a learning process to it where she's getting a little better at it, and it's not working as well as the original. And you know, if it was a Marvel movie now, she would be like spitting out replicas that were better than the original.
yeah, that's a good point. I like the world building of seeing how the power works, and we've only seen we've only seen the Tarangreal and the Angreal from the outside looking in, and we know what they do, but then the mechanisms, you get a little bit of an insight to that with Elaine figuring out that she can make them. So I do like that part, but I just feel like this is another one of those things that doesn't really go anywhere. Well, there's a thing way at the end, but spoilers.
Yeah, well, it really comes in handy when you talk about like making the extra dream turret and
Yeah.
Grail. Yeah, and this, even this scene where she's sorting, because this is a cache that nobody has found in thousands of years, uh, as far as that kind of haul in one place. You know, Moradin thinks that Samael was being an idiot by looking there, but this is all valuable stuff, and we're seeing exactly how valuable it is with her going through it. I mean, just getting one Engrel, let alone three she finds. I think three she finds in here, or two or three.
Yeah.
And they actually use them when they're in the bowl. Because doesn't Nynaeve do the finger ones for the rest of the series, pretty much?
I believe so.
Yeah. So yeah, it is definitely an important spot that we kind of glossed over. Thanks, Scott. Personally, I think the Aes Sedai should have left the Windfinders at the farm. This is the last time in the series that they do anything besides irritate. Yeah, for our reading pleasure, yes. But remember how I really dogged Moiraine about leaving the girl to be raped? That's pretty much what they would have been leaving them to the Seanchan there. I would prefer just you know, Brando Sando having written them better later, but I think the SLOG is overplayed, but the main, okay, so this is getting into the storyline for today, but the main cause of Perrin's storyline, I think this is the biggest mistake Jordan made in writing the series. Perrin goes from being a major player to a laughable bit part, and I seldom read Perrin and the Shido in full. I have read them complete before, but on reread, I just skim them.
Yeah, I think these two comments go along with what we're going to talk about today.
Yeah, we're going to get a heavy dose of that here in just a second.
And where I think you hit the nail on the head last time of I've referenced this before, but I really like this critical analysis, which sounds funny coming from a group of jokesters like Red Letter Media, but in there, but the thing that put them on the map was their just exhaustive critique of the Star Wars prequels. And one of the things they said repeatedly is, you might not have noticed, but your brain did. Because almost everyone I know, even if they liked the prequels, they all said, but all the talking parts were boring. It was just like they were there just as filler to get to the cool fight scenes. And they were. And, Red Letter Media pointed out technically how Lucas shot those talking scenes the exact same way every time. And so you might not have noticed the technique because you don't know that, because you don't know anything about film like me, but your brain noticed because it was a boring rhythm that lulled you to sleep. So I'd never really
My
thought
biggest
about it.
complaint in the prequels is you took a British actor and made him overplay a British accent. Ewan McGregor has his own British accent. He could have just talked normally and
He could
gotten
have.
what you wanted. Yeah.
Well, but he was trying to be Alec Guinness, who has a very different accent from Ewan McGregor.
Yeah, but
Sir Alec
I
Guinness.
have a different, a little bit different accent as I'm older than when I was younger
Yep.
too. So it's you could have just said age played into that. And he lived alone for a long time with nobody to talk to. That's going to change how you talk a little bit.
So the slog, as Scott refers to it, is the surface level thing that everyone notices that, oh my gosh, this storyline is taking forever and it's not going anywhere. But I think the big point was his second comment about what we're going to see here in a couple of chapters, with the wise one saying, no, don't recruit this guy for Rand, kill him. He's a psycho. He's a rabid dog. And so ultimately the storyline never goes anywhere. To your point last time, Perrin could have never been there. He could have been by Rand's side the entire time, and nothing would have changed in that part of the world. Nothing. It would have played out basically the same, except the prophet and the followers of the dragon and the Sanshin and the White Cloaks all would have just bled each other a little more.
Yeah.
Which actually would have helped Rand.
Or you could have made it part of Matt's storyline, with part of that being what bonds him to a certain person that we meet here in a little bit, because of the Shanshin and the prophets people fighting. You could have had that just rolled into that storyline.
Yeah.
And it wouldn't have slogged on. It would have made it like what, 4 or 5 extra chapters maybe.
So I'm trying to stay in the moment, because so much of what frustrates me about this storyline is knowing where it goes. So, because it's actually pretty decent here. Well, in the first couple of chapters.
In the goat pen chapter, it's where it derails for me right away, because what we just had was book 4 with pretty much the blossoming of his and Faile's relationship. And him growing up and learning what it is to have a companion, her kind of growing up and knowing what it is to complement someone who's moving on to greater things, who's destined for great things because he's Ta'veren, right? So and where her role is in that, and him learning how to let go a little bit and trust his partner. You just threw it all away in this chapter right here. He is back to the Perrin that spanked her in the ways.
That's a really good point, and I hadn't thought about where they came from, because there's a really long gap between when he disappears in the Crown of Swords and when he shows back up here, that you kind of forget how his storyline left off, which was that, remember at the end of Lord of Chaos, she's being real snippy at him because Berylane has decided, oh, our game is still on from the stone, or I'm going to I'm holding a grudge, which I guess we could talk about women holding grudges, but we're already canceled enough.
We had plenty of that in our other episodes. But no, it's
but then when he gets
the Perrin that came out of Dumai's Wells,
exactly.
would have in this first scene where he's sending Barrelane into the town and he makes that decision. He's like, "I'm so sorry, Faile," and she gets mad. He would have the post Dumas Wells Perrin would have turned to her and said, "She was told to come with me because she's useful. That's how she's useful." And then walked on, and Faile would have smelled like pleasure. And
Exactly. And remember where they let their relationship part of the story left off is when, I mean, he metaphorically spanked her this time in a much more mature way than what he did at the Ways, which was, you know, how dare you, bring up Barrelane like I could give, two flying flips about her when the entire ride back, days back, I'm worried sick. I'm all these worst case scenarios are going through my head because I have no idea what's going on. I just know it's bad. And I'm worried sick. How dare you? And he was forceful and masculine, which is literally turned her on.
mm-hmm.
And that so you're right that that's where we left off, and now here we are back at the beginning again.
At the very least, he would have known not to apologize. And he
Now,
stays in this mode for quite some time now, guys.
I I kind of under skipping ahead a little bit, I kind of think I understand what Jordan was doing here, which is that Perrin instinctively does things. He doesn't intellectually know until, maybe after the fact when he figures it out. He instinctually knew how to deal with Faile there last time, but I think the whole point of Elyas showing back up and the conversation that he and Perrin have, which is one of the better parts here, is meant to uh character build for Faile and world build for how the uh Saldeans are, their personality and their gender roles, and then also kind of growth for Perrin. So it's him being told why it worked the times he's done this. Elyas is basically explaining to him he could have done it in a better way than this.
Mm-hmm.
Of oh, I'm sorry, Faile, of stumbling over himself in such a awkward and dumb way.
Well,
Um.
let's rewind back to, because we can't
Okay.
skip over the goat pin itself, them coming to
Yes.
save the.
So was there anything else you had to talk about that
No,
you wanted to
I
mention before then?
yeah, no, I just didn't like the regression
Yeah.
there. Because
It,
realistically, he could have just told the truth. This is exactly why this woman was sent with me, and I'm using her like I'm supposed to use her.
but it also makes him kind of dumb and in the way that we hated in the series of he's Lenny from Mice and Men, because as he's thinking to himself here at the bottom of page 177 on the paperback, uh he had expected Faile to be angry when he chose Berlane for all that Rand supposedly had sent her for that purpose. Blah 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 blah. Yet her scent had been soft as a summer morning until he tried to apologize. Okay, well, if he smelled her, if he caught her scent, and he knew she wasn't angry, then why was he apologizing?
Mm-hmm.
Um. Anyway, let's not harp on that because there'll be plenty of reason for it. Uh. All right, so it's 178 in the paperback where the goat pin shows up.
Yeah.
Um.
If you're not in the paperback, it is. Let's see. 165. Yeah, it's pretty much right after the passage you just said, you just
Mhm.
read. Uh,
Uh. I think this is one of the other frustrating parts with this whole part and with his relationship with Faile because he is so assertive and self-confident outside of that. I mean, he was we saw him in Shadow Rising, which is why it's so great, is he was hesitant to take the lead because here he is half the age of these men who were on the village council, and for crying out loud, um he doesn't know this, but Tam was a freaking companion. He was basically the special forces of
Hmm.
Ilion, and fought in the Aiel War and some of the other wars that they had with Tyr. And yet he takes command, and here he is. He no longer hesitates, and you saw that growth in Shadow Rising. He no longer hesitates, um, and he even does it here when they go riding in, and he notices that Faile, of course, is riding in with him, and he doesn't tell her to hold back. He doesn't say no. He just says guard my back, and then tries to get Aram's attention to keep an eye on her. Um, and it's frustrating that he never shows that assertiveness, that mastery, that understanding in his relationship with Faile, which
Well, he did
makes
for
it fall
the end
for
of a book
yes,
and another
yeah,
total
yeah,
book that he
true.
was in. That's again, that's my whole point is we should be past this. We were past this at one point.
Mhm. Yes, we were.
I think that's what makes it the slog, because it's a tired old point. It's not it's a revisited storyline.
Yeah.
Rand gets
Uh,
this way a little bit later too, when he starts going into his
yes.
funk.
Yeah. Where it's a Rand gets into a similar slog. I like Scott's word there. His storyline gets into a similar slog later. Um, so what in particular about the goat pen did you want to focus
I
on?
I just didn't want to skip over another important event where we
Mhm.
meet these people, but kind of the resolution of it. Now, what I didn't pick the nuance out of was he had ordered them to make the distraction, but then the Aes Sedai is in trouble with the wise ones for doing the distraction. I don't
Yeah.
I mean, that was kind of a silly little thing to include in there, because I mean, what did they have to give her permission to do it, or if so, why didn't they?
Yeah.
Or why
Yeah.
didn't they
Yeah.
create the distraction? They could do something too.
Yeah. They don't like to advertise that they can channel, but they can.
Mm-hmm. So that one was a little silly, but fast forward through the altercation, they bring in the one person, and he notices the ears, and he gets pretty pissed off, and you see that sense of justice from him. And to Scott's comment about he should just kill Masama, that would violate the sense of justice, and we can talk about in spoilers of how that resolves. But
Mhm.
but it's he has to actually see, evaluate, and then judge for himself
Yeah.
personally before he can make that call. But
Exactly.
he's got evidence, exhibit number one right now with the ears.
Exactly. Um, but as he's thinking, let's see, where is it? The bottom of 184 on the paperback. A pity he could not sniff out guilt. Might have dropped, was not, had dropped. Um, if I could tie that to you, you'd hang from the nearest tree, he growled. Um, and then he tells him who he is and troubles and sends him running off. Um, this is one of the, and I may go digging and see if I can find any comments Jordan made on Faile and Perrin, if he expounded in any Q&As or anything, because I have trouble understanding her character where she's such Quicksilver. You know, she's very, bipolar in the colloquial sense. Is her mood changes like that. And here she is, where is it? Faile was smiling, pride shining through the sweat on her face. Her look washed away some of Perrin's revulsion. He would walk barefoot through fire for that look. Uh, she is so proud of him when he's in this moment, when he is Perrin the leader, and yet she can't see past. She can't understand why he's not that way with her. even knowing, even having lived for months in the two rivers and getting to know those people.
Well, all I have to say, Heath, is have you met a woman?
Well, that's fair. I take a man, and then I take away reason and accountability. And we're canceled again. Okay. Um, I mean, yes, but it's it's impossible for us as men. That's why the Women Are from Venus, Men Are from Mars book was such a bestseller and a cultural thing, because it is very difficult to figure out what the other is thinking, because it's so hard to put yourself in their shoes. But if you think hard enough, you can usually figure it out, even if it doesn't make sense to you, right? This makes no sense
It's
why
never good
Faile is
enough,
doing this,
and
but
it's
she's
always
doing it
something
because
new.
of this. Yeah,
It's never good enough. Always, she fell in love with all those things, but then she found the thing she doesn't like. So then she's got to change the things she doesn't like. It's like buying houses. Look at
that's
these
a good point.
suburban women. They go and look at all these houses and they're like, this house is perfect. They go sign all the paperwork, do everything, put a mortgage on it. In the house, first thing they do is remodel. The house wasn't perfect, apparently.
Apparently so.
Yeah.
Yep.
And then some of them, if they stay in a house longer than 10 years, they pretty much remodel every 10 years. Some I trained too many suburban women. Some of them remodel. They're already talking about the next remodel as the first remodel's finishing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's why women are in charge of fashion, as Gerald Ford said. It's so hideous it has to change every 6 months.
Ah, all right.
As I'm getting us more and more canceled.
Um, moving along. So the next chapter, um, I think we get a little bit of why it was a little contrived, but why there was that moment between the Aes Sedai and the Wise Ones there. Because as he's going through the camp and he's noting, and this will get deeper later, of the okay, well, it's really actually like three camps, separate camps, and there's this. He's been, I mean, he's Eisenhower. He has been saddled with this coalition that he didn't create, but he knows he has to keep together to win the fight that he's up against. And none of these people necessarily like each other, and they certainly don't really know each other. Uh, so, and they're all kind of there are these kind of shifting, not necessarily alliances, but friendships, coalitions. Sometimes the Two Rivers people are more with the Miners and the who's the other group with them? Oh no, they come later. Never mind.
Yeah.
Disregard that.
I was about
Disregard
to
that.
say.
I was like, I know there's another group of wetlanders there, and I was like, oh no, wait, that's later. So sometimes they're there, sometimes they kind of identify more with the Aiel, and then of course the Aiel are kind of arrogant and apart from all of them. Uh, and he has to navigate all of that, which is again trying to find the bright side. That is one of the few bright sides to this storyline, is how Jordan writes him. If you take out all the relationship stuff, even though it does go on way too long and it ultimately doesn't really matter that much, it's a pretty good Perrin storyline, because you do get to see him doing some, you know, as Faile says or thinks at one point, that she loves it when Perrin is masterful, um, and that's what he does. And again, I like that we see it, because we're going to see Rand some more here in a little bit, and then next book we get a lot of Matt, and all three of them do it very differently. Perrin's the instinctual one. He's not. He is a thinker. He doesn't think of himself as a thinker, but he's a slow thinker, because he wants everything lined up. He wants to think through as many variables as he can think of. But then when he does act, he's often acting very instinctually.
uh, as we're moving into this, as we get out of the Gulp Pen and then into the camp, we introduce the Klingons, Megden and Talanvor and Linny, and which is again these are all the reasons why this is the slog, because this is also one of the most annoying love stories in the whole series, because we were already getting past this too when they were with the White Cloaks.
Yep.
But now they're in this, angsty teen Twilight relationship again, and it's well, I mean, it's still a better love story than Twilight, but it's close. This is a close second to being pretty bad.
Yeah. Yeah.
When you this is a Talonvor turns into like Gawain. Why we dislikes Gawain?
He's a simp.
He's a simp.
Mhm.
Yeah. You can understand when he was fawning for a queen that he could never have, but he's
Yes.
still doing it.
Yes. Uh, as he, well, we'll get there when we get there. Um, and she's still being, I think this is my frustration with Mistress Magdan's storyline is early on, like when she's able to break through Ravine's compulsion and his conditioning, which is a big effing deal, you know, because you hardly ever see an example of that. It's why it was such a big deal when Nynaeve did it with Malgideon, and she doesn't even have the power. She can just you know channel the tiniest trickle. She does it really through intellect and force of will as she starts to think through and see things that are wrong. Um, but then here, she's smart enough to understand her position, that the position that she's in. That, I mean, for crying out loud, she literally legally is not the queen anymore. So why do you keep acting like one? But set aside the fact that even if you were legally technically the queen, you don't have the power and authority because it's just you, a guardsman, an innkeeper, a bouncer, and some refugee. That is your army. So why are you still acting like the queen? So specifically, it's 192 on the paperback when she sees the banners, and one of them is the banner of Manetheren, and she's being, throwing a hissy fit about uh, uh, they were raised by men in Andor and the Two Rivers who rebelled against their lawful ruler. Ibara is a Two Rivers name, I think, and Perrin growls back because he's right. Um,
Yeah.
uh, and and then she does the same thing that Elaine is going to do here, that Elaine does about this, and we've already seen a little bit of it of let's see, far from being mollified, Magdan rounded on him, blue eyes blazing. He intends to put her on the throne. No man puts a queen on the lion throne. Elaine will claim the throne of Andor by her right. Okay, you can understand why both Morghese and Elaine are so snooty about it, and you know angry about the prospect, but she's smart enough to know, that outburst would make more sense and be better if she had been more cunning in her initial, but the way he describes her is defiant. It's hands on hips, and her tone is accusatory.
Mhm.
If she had been more
Which
sly about, oh hey, what's that all about?
Yeah, which is doubly so because I can see her being indignant because I mean your whole life you're not only you were that person, but you're trained to keep this as something sacred, the whole
Yes,
process of having the queen.
that's a good point.
So I can understand the indignation, but there has to be a little part in your brain that we never get from her that is, well, I did let a Forsaken take over.
I don't know
But
that
and
she
she
knows
doesn't
that
even
yet.
know it's a Forsaken.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
She
what that makes it
I
worse.
did let this other man take over and I left.
So far as anyone
There
knew, a
had to be
minor noble from the
there had to been
west.
rumors already that uh Rand killed a Forsaken that was there and Lord Gabriel disappeared. So, she should be smart enough to put them together, but at the same time she did leave the throne to a man. And you have to understand you did that, not Rand.
Yeah, that's a good point. That it, not only did you do that, but then you got yourself in such an impossible situation that you swore an oath, abdicating the throne.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you were a good queen, could have been a good queen, but as Perrin
That
says,
I didn't even think about that. You just brought up not only did she leave the throne to a man, but then in trying to rectify that, she almost signed it over
yeah.
to another man and organization.
Well, she did actually. She had signed over so that the White Cloaks were going to have. I mean, he doesn't lay it out explicitly, but it certainly sounds like they would have almost as much authority in Andor as they currently have in. Can't even remember the name of the country because the country is irrelevant. It's all about Amadicia because it's all about the White Cloaks.
Mm-hmm.
The king, the country is a figurehead.
Yeah, and which is what they were going to try to do in Andor, basically create the same situation.
Yep. All right. Um, I don't want to harp on that anymore. So moving along. Um, uh, I do like um I like the next page when Perrin recognizes and talks to Master Gill. As soon as you finish your watch, Master Gill, I'd like to talk with you. And Gill is flabbergasted, not just because well, we've blown our cover, the gig is up. It's I think he genuinely couldn't believe that someone who was just passing through his inn and is now a very important person uh, on a mission from the dragon himself, and someone that all of these people are deferring to and calling Lord Perrin. He remembers him and he wants to talk to him. Um, and I like the little tidbit of Lamgwin here. He's one of
It
those
should be
fun
played
little.
by Dolph Lundgren, by the way.
Yes,
Yes.
he's he's a just this quiet hulking guy, and then every once in a while he says something, and you're like, "You're kind of cool, dude." Of you know, and he, this is probably more words than he's ever said ever about we heard about young Rand being the Dragon Reborn, Master Gill and me. Should have figured you'd come up in the world too. Perinabar is a good man, Mistress Megan. I think you could trust him with anything you've a mind to. He was not lazy and he was not stupid either. So he's kind of this hulking guy who looks like he's half asleep, but he's not.
Yeah. So Dolph Lundgren in several ways because he's got more science degrees than Bill Nye the Science Guy. So
Yep. Um. All right. So I I think the only thing I really like and have always liked about this storyline is you hear so much about Lenny from Elaine, and then when you actually get to meet her, she doesn't disappoint.
yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Where she's basically the one in charge of this group.
Also should be played by Betty White.
Oh,
Uh,
yeah. Oh crap, I just forgot her name. No, the even older lady on Golden Girls, Estelle Getty.
oh
She
yeah,
she
yeah.
was she was great too. She's kind of who I think of
Or the lady who
with Lenny.
played Granny in the Beverly Hillbillies because she was actually one of the youngest women on sets. She might still be kicking.
Yikes.
It's the rheumatism.
Um
And one of my favorite characters too, Balwer, shows up
oh,
here in
how could
yeah.
you forget him? Yeah, because he's with them now.
And this
Yeah,
is
because I
it,
completely
again one of
forgot
the
about him.
shining points of the slog here is Faile figuring out that he's kind of this awesome dude and just straight up putting him to work, just boom, 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 boom.
Yeah,
And Perrin being kind of none the wiser.
yeah. All right, where do we get to? Uh let's see. So you get a little bit of what I was talking about and the frustration with Faile, which I think just adds to the frustration when the dumbness comes up. Page 205 here. After with Perrin and Faile talking, mostly about, Perrin's obviously concerned that the Shanshin have taken Amador, and uh, and she's not fighting with him. She's disagreeing with him. She's arguing with him, but she's doing it in a way that shows that they are partners, as opposed to when he apologizes to her. And we see from her points of view later, she knows darn well why he does what he does. And to your point, it's because she's remodeling already.
Yeah.
Okay, so here we go. So 205, she goes off on this long paragraph in the middle about explaining, you know, strategically, because she was trained, grown up to think that way, strategically why he should do what she's suggesting. Um, Abruptly, her smile vanished. She stuck a finger against his nose, hard. And don't call yourself an idiot, Perrin T. Bashir Abira. Not even sideways like that. You aren't, and I do not like it. Her scent was tiny spikes. Not true anger, but definitely displeased. Quicksilver, a kingfisher flashing by faster than thought. Certainly faster than his thoughts. Um, but that kind of Quicksilver is endearing because she gets mad at him for insulting himself.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and then we get her. I don't know. How do you feel about this? So then there's a break here at the end of the chapter where it switches to Faile's point of view,
Mm-hmm.
and she's sneaking off to talk to her spies, the uh the people that we saw briefly. And this is one of those things I do like when Jordan does, where this is where the convoluted web of the story works for me, is you just saw these people in passing when Rand was walking through Karheen to get an update on what was going on, like early in the middle of Lord of Chaos. So you just saw these people in passing, and now here they are, actually playing a somewhat important role. And so that groundwork has already been laid.
Mm-hmm. Well, she does make mention earlier in the series that it's the wife's duty to be the spy master. So
That's a good point.
this is consistent. So yeah, as annoying as the Faile people are in the books with their, I mean, I hate to be, bring out my inner Aiel, but they annoy me in that same way that they're posers. They end up becoming semi-competent posers, but they're still posers. And you would like that to have been something like they were their own thing, where she was identifying these nobles that wanted to learn how to fight, and they kind of attached themselves to her because, but in the whole imitating the Aiel thing,
Yeah.
I can see internally for some reason I get just as triggered as the Aiel did.
I think it's because we only ever get the annoying parts. We very rarely see them trying to work it out, trying to figure it out. We very rarely see why they do it the way they do it, why they have kind of twisted Giotto the way they have, or at least from the perspective of the Aiel. I think a little more interaction between them and the real Aiel would have been more fun, and also kind of shined more light on who these people are and why they are the way they are. And then so this part isn't so bad as much as we've grumbled about the Morgay storyline and not really going anywhere. Um, it I don't think it is maybe a weird analogy, but I respect Zack Snyder as an artist, a creator, and a director. I don't like him. I don't because I don't think he ever does what he sets out to do. Because if you watch interviews of him talking about his movies and the reason he did what he did, you're like, oh, wow, that must have been a great movie. And then you remember you saw it and you hated it. But you can at least understand why he did what he did. So I appreciate that Jordan is able to write so well that you at least understand why Morgase is doing what she's doing. It's entirely plausible. It's entirely keeping within her character, but I don't think he executes it very well uh when we see her from the outside looking in, when we see her from the third person, from someone else's point of view. It's not as consistent as what we see here when we're inside her mind. But you at least understand where that conflict comes from of,
Mhm.
yeah, I know I'm not the queen anymore, but I still have duties and obligations. Um, but to your point earlier, and I was um trying to remember exactly where it was, and it is like I was it was here at the end of the chapter that you kind of touched on this with the Talonvor Morgase thing is Talonvor knows that she's not the queen anymore. And he knows that she knows that he knows that she knows.
Mhm.
So that's what makes it tedious. Because as he says, you always fling that back in my face. But I followed you because I wanted to, and I'm still following you because I want to. Um, so
Well, we had that end of the pig or the goat pen thing
mhm.
where everybody's looking at Perrin differently because of his sense of justice, realistically, but then because of his protectiveness, how wrong Tolliver gets it. Says you heard him threaten to hang anyone who looked at him the wrong way. No, he didn't threaten to hang anybody that looked at him the wrong way. He threatened to hang anybody who was cutting off people's ears for the profit.
Yeah, yeah. Um, and I know it's his overprotectiveness, but you would think he would actually be a little more appreciative, and that would might make him more aligned towards Perrin because they had to deal with it. I mean, this can't have been their first interaction with the Prophet's people.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they've been traveling through Ghealdan for a while now, trying to get away from. I mean, first they were trying to get away from the Sanchin, now they're trying to get away from the chaos from the Prophet's people. This can't have been their first
Well,
interaction.
yeah, even before that, the seeing the White Cloaks hang the people that were trying to rescue them.
Yeah.
This is hardly the most oppressive situation they've been in since leaving Ravine.
Yep. Uh, where is it? So, we get so at the beginning of the next chapter, as he's going through the camp, um, we get uh we get the introduction to Bulwer, which is great. To your point, is we it's it really makes this scene very satisfying and fun, knowing who he is, knowing the skills he has, and then seeing the way he talks to Perrin, and Perrin having no clue who this guy is and what he's capable of. Um, do you, all right, before we get to the wise ones, do you have any thoughts on his interactions with the minor winged guards and how he deals with that?
No, not really. This
Okay.
is it's just an extension of his Barrelane stuff.
Well, I also think it just it adds to his the way he is able to uh instinctually do the right thing, even if he doesn't understand why people are reacting the way they're reacting, because it doesn't make sense to him. Because he says something that he thought was just dumb, um, but they loved it. Um, I do like his little his interaction with Sulan, because I think it ties into the what we were talking about with the prologue and Varen
Hmm.
and not understanding how things work. Of she's shocked that the warders would shame their Aes Sedai by offering to take her punishment. And that's just it's a different way of looking at what honor means. All right, so here we get the what uh we were talking about with the comments, what Scott mentioned about just kill Mossima straight off is and then they get into it. And it's I like that we're in the middle of a conversation here because they say and then we get the impression that they've been having this discussion, this debate and argument ever since he started off on this. And we don't get an exact timeline, but it certainly feels like he's been at this for weeks.
Hmm.
Like the scene where we last saw him at the end of Crown of Swords, where he traveled to here, was weeks ago. That he's been at this for a little while.
Yeah, well, and not only that, but uh they comment that it's good that he's going to them this time because he's apparently been putting their backs up by making them come to him.
Mhm.
And uh it still doesn't go supremely well, but at least but we get the impression that not only has it been going on for a while, but he's been doing everything wrong in the diplomatic process as well.
Yeah. Um, to his credit, I don't know that they necessarily treat him the way they would a clan chief, and he certainly ranks at least that high, uh, as that of a clan chief. You know, more than just a sept chief. He's ranks pretty high, and he's got a lot of authority and responsibility. So you would think they would it. They certainly treat him a lot harsher than we see them treating, you know, when we see them interacting with Rourke or certainly Rand. Yeah, they're more blunt. Yeah, they're not deferential. Um, but these wise ones are downright hostile.
Yeah, and it doesn't make, I mean, we're not supposed to really understand Jadto anyways, but
Yes.
even Matt they treated with more deference. uh but there were several times where one of the other Aiel pointed out that he had gained much G, like when he
Mhm.
killed Couladin, right? So he was rising in their respect ranks, their hierarchy of respect. But Perrin also went to Demise Wells.
Yes.
I don't know how that didn't create. He was the instigating party in saving Rand, the
Mhm.
Corn. So I don't know how that didn't raise his
Yeah.
respect level
A-
with them.
and and the wise ones, like all the other Aiel, followed him as the battle leader, not Rourke, who was there, who is a
Mhm.
not just a clan chief, but one of the top most respected clan chiefs. And they all followed Perrin's lead.
Maybe that's what's so annoying about not only this storyline but kind of this book in general is we Jordan, he kind of like lost the plot on a lot of things. It's like this book in particular, and he kind of gets it back in Winter's Heart, is the dropping of a lot of things he's built up and being a little inconsistent.
Yeah, I think it may be a function of just how big the story got,
Hmm.
how many notes he had, how many things he wanted to do, and it may have been a function of, okay, how do I do all these things that I wanted to do, and he didn't. Uh, he probably needed more of an editing process in the outlining, than just in the writing as well of, okay, which storylines matter the most? What do I need to focus on? And how do I get from, I'm now at point E, and within a short amount of time I've got to get over to point L over here. So what are the steps along the way? And I think
Well,
he just had way too much going on.
well, and we give him the benefit of the doubt with New Spring that he wanted to do this as a separate project, but maybe he had gotten to a point after the book getting into book 7. He's like, I kind of
Burnout, yeah.
not burned out, but he wrote the ending in the beginning, right? So he
Yes.
already knew that. But then everything along the way, he might have gotten into the point. He's like, well, shoot, I kind of lost myself. I've got to take some time to regroup. Let me
Mhm.
write another book in the meantime, and then I'll regroup and come in. And it kind of came out a little bit tangled.
Yeah. All right, but moving along. My point about the hostility, it's down at the bottom of 235 here. Uh the man must die, Adara said at last. It is enough that 3 dreamwalkers have said so, and 6 wise ones tell you. So I feel like they wouldn't be that uh unresponsive even to a clan chief, even a clan chief who knows what dreamwalking means.
Mm-hmm.
And they know full well that he doesn't know what that means. He has not grown up with dreamwalkers and what they can do. Uh so I mean, to their credit, um they do have Sionid come in and they let her take a stab at it because I mean uh she speaks his language, um, so to speak, but I do like how it ends though, this exchange with the so this is 237 in the paperback. Um they're as harsh as the wise ones are and can be, and then what makes you think we would kill her, Perrin Ibira? Janina asked curiously. Aiel seldom showed much on their faces, but the others frowned at him or looked with open incredulity. I know how you feel, he replied slowly. I've known since I saw you with the sisters after Dumai's Wells. He was not about to explain that he had smelled their hatred, their contempt, every time a wise one looked at an Aes Sedai back then. He did not smell it now, but no one could maintain that level of fury for long without bursting. That did not mean it was gone, only that it had sunk deep, maybe into the bone. Um, so I do like the ending of this scene, this kind of realization on all sides that we don't really know each other and we're making a lot of assumptions here.
Mm-hmm.
And so they do end uh they do end with a little more respect and understanding when they explain to him, no, we don't kill apprentices, and that's what they are. So this is how we treat them and how we're going to treat them until whatever it is. I think 5 wise ones agree that they are ready to be more. So, uh, and then they just dismiss him. So they go back to, all right, we're done now. All right.
Wait, one thing that I'm not getting here. She's talking about the kneeling woman. Oh, okay, never mind. Disregard Alter. Hello. I saw the work of the so-called Dragon Sword before I ever met Randall Thor. Death and destruction to no purpose. Even faithful dog must be put down if it begins to foam in the mouth. I'm like, where did you see that before you met Randall Thor? If they were all just sent here.
Uh, that's a good point. Um, Do we know anything about what she was doing before she ended up? I think she was with the Saladar Aes Sedai, so they would have been in relatively close proximity
Hmm.
to what was going on there because they were just across the board of Amadicia in Ghealdan. So that's probably where she would have seen it. I don't know if we ever read anything explicitly on that. All right, but to chapter 10, which is the place I really wanted to get to today. Because this may be my favorite part of this book. Because as much as I have grumbled about this book, this is a truly enjoyable chapter. And it's because Elyas shows back up. And that's how well Jordan can write characters. We have heard Elyas mentioned, he has been referenced, but this is book 8, and we haven't seen him since book 1. But that's how much of an impact he makes. And that was why it was so stupid and
Well,
infuriating that he wasn't in season 1.
see him in New Spring.
You do see him very briefly in New Spring.
Yes.
You hear his name.
Well, but they talk about actually watching him because he's
Yeah,
sparring with the other warder. So
yeah. So he's sparring with because his Aes Sedai was a green, and so he was sparring with one of her other warders. And he shows back up in such a great way. And the I mean the pure joy that you can tell from Perrin from his point of view that, you know, oh, this is great, that it's great to see him again. And then of course Elias's first question is,
well, no, let's stick with a theme that we just talked
okay.
about respect with the Aiel. Gaul said loudly, I did not know he was behind me until he coughed. And then the maidens and everybody was so silent that it was the level of G he just earned by Gaul making that statement was, immense. So he's already a super respected person in this group of people.
Yeah.
And again, back to the why isn't Perrin have any of this?
That's a good point, because they show him such an immense sign of respect that Elyas gets uncomfortable.
Gaul's just lucky he didn't touch him.
Yeah, good thing he didn't tap you on the shoulder
Yeah,
and say hi there,
especially if you were holding a spear.
which he would have been.
Yep.
Uh Yeah, and instead, some of the women took up spears and bucklers to rattle them together in approbation. And Perrin was expecting. I'll just read the whole thing. Perrin expected at least a few cutting comments. Aiel humor could near draw blood, and the maiden seized any chance to dig at the green-eyed man. But instead, some of the women took up spears and bucklers to rattle them in together in approbation. Gaul nodded approval. So it is. The Irish sense of humor is odd, but to your point, this is a big effing deal when it comes to G.
Well, and it's also a nugget that's a clue into something that you kind of get little hints at along the way, and you're supposed to know by the hints. But Gaul's a freaking badass.
Yeah.
And they're recognizing that what just happened was super hard to do. He wasn't some just, fresh out of picking up a spear kid. He's one of the most respected warriors in that whole society.
Mm-hmm. I don't that dang it. Stop making me think about the show, which I hate. I don't know if I mentioned this when we were talking about the show, but one of my concerns with that scene where him and Tom bury the eel, actually no, it was him and Rand, wasn't it? Yes.
Tom and Matt.
Where Tom and Matt bury him, is that made me wonder, are they even going to have Gaul? Or was that because that was
the
so
Aiel
much
in the cage.
that was so much like that scene, except that Thaio was already dead, that it made me think, did y'all just kill Gaul without even naming him?
Well,
Anywho,
I'm not confident the Perrin actor can pull off any of these scenes anyway, so might as well give them to
clearly.
Matt.
Might as well. But uh before we even get to the ideal scene, what I was getting at was something you mentioned before, which was one of the disappointments in Perrin's storyline. Stupid allergies. Was very early on the hammer versus the axe. And you get a little something of that way later. I don't think we even need to talk about it in spoiler time. But right here off the bat, and this may be one of my dissatisfactions with this storyline and with this book, is because I kind of thought that's why Elyas was here. I thought that's why he showed up, as a storytelling device. That's the first thing he mentions. Right when he greets Perrin, it's lost the page there. Where'd it go? Good to see you again, boy, he said quietly. You give away that X finally? I didn't think you'd ever stop hating it. It's the first thing he says because he understood how important it was. Because he can read people, he knows people, and the wolf connection and the scent and all that would have given him an even deeper understanding of Perrin than Perrin had of himself at that point. And then yeah, well, we'll get more on the axe and the hammer later. As as this storyline goes on. Okay. Um okay, here we are. And then they get to why he's here. I just happened to be in Ghealdan when some mutual friends told me you were traveling with this parade. Told me a lot of things. Told me they smell a change coming. They don't know what. Maybe you do. I hear you've been running around with the Dragon Reborn. Uh, I I like that. Um, I like that little nugget of it. To me, it's kind of like Min when she sees the darkness trying to overwhelm Rand, and when he's with the other boys, when the Tavaran are together, the little fireflies of light are holding their own against the darkness. So it's just this supernatural sense of dread. And I like that the wolves feel that, and they don't know what it is and they can't explain it, but they can sense it because uh it's not just a philosophical evil, that it has a physical manifestation in how it impacts the world, which we see most pronouncedly, especially at this point with the weather.
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead. All right, so then we get to the conversation between them where Elyas explains all about Saldean women and how I like how it starts with he was surprised to hear that he'd married one, and Perrin asks why, and why, because you're a quiet sort. I thought you'd marry somebody quiet too. Well, by now Saldeans aren't quiet except with strangers and outsiders. Set the sun on fire one minute, the next it's all blown away and forgotten. Make Felon look stolid and Domini downright dull. Um,
I think we need to bring something back up.
Oh, do we?
Yeah.
Okay. I I think this was the point of that little thing that we didn't like, that interaction with Faile at the beginning here. I just wish you would have done it a better way that wasn't such a reset, was more of him, thinking he was doing the right thing, or right as the way Faile wanted it.
Yeah. So now we got to say we're looking at this through Perrin's eyes. So what we put her about a 9.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm thinking she's right on the line right here.
Danger.
Because she's definitely above a 7. So I mean he wifed her up, but she's definitely not in the wife zone because she's way above 7 crazy. And yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But what people don't know, I've dated the person that's on a 9 and a 9, and yeah, you don't think about it very much when you're under the sheets. It's it's
Wild ride.
yeah, it's good while it lasts. But protect yourself and save every text. That's the key.
Um, so did you have any more thoughts on that?
uh, I like how one parent's trying to deny it. She's not like that. I don't mean she doesn't get angry now and again. That's his answer. If I've ever smelled a man trying to dodge hail.
Yep. Yep. It's an odd juxtaposition. It's a great phrase. Um, so then we get to I like the transition from uh amusing interpersonal stuff, and now we come to serious big picture major plot point politics as holy cow, they just smuggled the queen out of that little town and she's in your tent now. Um
We pitch in a tent. Oh, I mean,
Not yet.
pa- parents not like that.
Yep. I I like this scene for what I've already mentioned, that it shows it shows how Perrin does things instinctually, and all he's doing is just trying to do the right thing as he sees it. He's just doing what is right and what is common sense. Um, Almost went off on a political tangent, but let's just move along. I also like I also like the way again that they're partners, that they work together, much like in their in the night before when they were having the discussion, and the way they work with each other, the way they complement each other, and the way um Faile, drops little hints that he gets and he's able to play off of, the way she mutters under her breath, knowing as she's trying to take a drink, hiding it, knowing that he'll be able to hear it.
Which is was just again to me the annoying part because you have that growth there. The
Yes.
growth is already
Yes.
there, and then we keep having these moments where they're like silly little stupid kids again.
Mhm.
But those
Yeah.
moments where they're stupid are needed to push the story along. That's why I think they feel so out of place because they push us into the direction of what the things that happen. The cooperation was more natural at this point in the books, I should say.
Yes. That's a good point. That's why the character growth works so well
You know what it almost feels
almost all
like?
the time.
It almost feels like Jordan had the Bearlane Faile rivalry written into his notes, but then he wrote their relationship so well in book 4 and 6 that he found himself in a spot where I'm like, oh shit, that doesn't work. I'll have to make it
Maybe.
work, you know?
Maybe. Yeah. Or maybe he meant to get back to it sooner, and because he did talk about that, about how the books just kept getting bigger. I mean, that's literally, you see that if you line the books up on your shelf, they get bigger and bigger as the series progresses.
There they are
Yeah.
going
So
across.
it may just be that as the word count ballooned, that he just didn't get back to it as soon as he wanted to,
Mm-hmm.
which also makes it make less sense because you've had that growth. Um, and he accidentally fumbles his way into having a queen swear fealty to him. Um, so or 256 is where this is happening, and I like Perrin's Perrinness here. That yeah, he's astonished. Yeah, he's a little confused, but his first thought is to ask why. That's his response to her trying to pledge fealty to him. Yeah, part of him is thinking, burn me, I'm a bloody blacksmith. Nobody swore fealty to blacksmiths. But I mean, that's just part of his mind, the self-doubting part. But what he says is, I've been told I'm Tavarin. You might want to reconsider this in an hour.
Yeah, and again, we got to put ourselves in a world where this is the lore. Her answer is perfect. I hope you
Yes.
are.
Yeah.
I'm kind of banking on this.
Because my country is falling apart. It's literally burning
Yeah.
right now.
Yeah, we're getting burned by a guy naming himself the prophet. You actually are a prophet.
That's a good point.
The world bends around you
Mhm.
to some degree when it's convenient for the storyline.
Yeah. Um, I like the nugget here at the end of this scene that we get of the last I heard, Alejandra told him the prophet was in a small town of Abaila. In spite of himself, Perrin frowned, though he smoothed his brow quickly. So Bulwer had been right. Yes, of course he had. Um, and then he gets scooched outside. Um, I I think another thing that makes the Faile Bearlane Perrin thing annoying is we don't get enough Faile Bearlane interaction. And we
Mm-hmm.
haven't had it since the Stone and then all the way into Lord of Chaos for a little bit, and it just a little bit, and then it kind of all disappears, and now it's backing in. And uh I I like this scene here where it cuts to Faile and her basically setting out to make sure that um Alejandre is going to, as Faile thinks, hold to her oath because Southlanders, which is anyone south of the borderlands, had strange notions of honor and duty. Which is a very Aiel way of thinking. Uh, but for a similar reason, because they come from similar backgrounds, so to speak. Uh, but then the way her and Bearlane kind of instinctively work together here to make sure that they reinforce that oath and then set Alejandre to doing things that are going to help Perrin that Perrin wouldn't necessarily think to do or want to do, like telling her to sneak back into town. That's kind of dangerous. She wants to be here where it's safe, where she's surrounded by a small army and next to a Tavarin who is one of the right hands of the dragon himself and was sent here by the dragon himself. She didn't want to go back. Okay, but you need to and you're going to because you swore an oath and this needs to happen. So it it reinforces something that I think could have been shown better, which is that um to Bearlane, this is a game and she wants to win. Okay, but this isn't a game anymore. This is real life. This is serious business.
Mm-hmm.
So, later when it doesn't matter, when business is taken care of, she'll try and get under Faile's skin because they're as Bearlane sees it, they're in a competition together and she's going to win. And that's all it is to her. And I don't think you get enough of that because it makes the whole situation slightly less annoying when you understand where Bearlane is coming from a little better.
Mm-hmm. Well, and how you understand how women work too, because everything is subterfuge. Everything is reputation damage. Everything is little rumors here and there to
Mm-hmm.
knock down your mate value.
Which also you get a little bit of it, but that would let you also see more where Faile is coming from because Faile's no dummy. I think she understands that to Bearlane it's just a game. But this is why I hate the phrase, well, it's nothing personal. No, it's nothing personal to you. But
Mm-hmm.
to that other person, yeah, it's personal. So this isn't a game to Faile. This is the man she
That's
fell
the
in love
root.
with and wanted
That's
to
the root of
marry.
the word personal. It's
Yeah,
individual.
exactly.
Yeah.
So it's entirely personal to her. This isn't a game. This isn't a lark. This is her marriage. This is her reputation, her husband's reputation. When it comes to, and you see it a little bit later, when it comes to people thinking he's been fooling around, it's seriously damaging to his reputation, which is a big effing deal to someone who's in charge of people. All right, that's enough of that. And then we go back to Perrin, and I think this wraps up this scene. I like the way he bookends this scene, this section of Perrin with the goat pin, and now here we have some of the winged guards coming in, and they have captured some people up to no good. We came on these turnip eaters about two. Oh, that's rude. Some people I don't really like turnips, but I like turnip greens. Is that weird? Um,
I don't mind turnips, but just a little bit goes a long way.
yeah. Burning a farm with the farm folk inside. A woman tried to get out a window, and one of these scum bashed her head in. Knowing how Lord Abira feels, we put a stop to it. We were too late to save anybody, but we caught these 7. The rest got away. And Perrin orders hang them. Having given the order, he made himself watch. Despite the murmurs, there was no lack of ready hands. Some of the prisoners began to weep as their lead ropes, blah, 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 blah. And then the one just looks at the one true believer, just glares at them. And then you get the little hint of something's not right with Aram. Of if those people were serving the shadow, Aram began, then hesitated. Forgive me, Lord Perrin, but will the Lord Dragon approve of this? Perrin gave a start and stared at him aghast. Light, Aram, you heard what they did. Rand would have put the ropes on their necks themselves. He thought Rand would have, hoped he would have. Rand was fixed on welding the nations together before the last battle, and he had done little counting of cost to do so. And then you get a very tiny little thunderstorm, which makes people look up in astonishment, which is cool. And this is where the timeline gets a little weird, because this is one of 2 places where there's kind of overlap where he kind of goes backwards.
Mm-hmm.
And you start to see, and it's going to happen a couple more times of when people first see the weather start to change.
Not exactly backwards, because at the very beginning of the goat pin chapter, he talks about all the channelers were like, we could feel something a few days ago. So we're actually a little bit forward. Yeah.
But then later you're going to get other people's first reaction to when the weather started to change.
Mm-hmm.
So I think in this book he does a lot of moving forward, jumping back a little bit, moving forward, jumping back a little bit, and he's still moving forward, but it's kind of like this instead of a linear line. All right, so that is that as far as that section goes. And then chapter 11 we'll get into Savannah, and I don't know what we're going to say about that, but we'll figure it out. Did we have any spoiler things to talk about? We already talked about the comments.
I mean, okay, spoiler section, even though we're probably not going to say much, it's just the irritating thing with the Faile relationship, because ultimately she does what realistically the conflict between them is, and it culminates into her doing the thing he can't do, which is kill Massima, because of his sense of justice and his unwillingness to displease Rand and all these things. So she takes that out of his hand. But that's a complementary role.
Yes.
That's not a conflicting role.
And even that is undercut by the awkwardness of their relationship after Faile gets rescued. There's this, and it's understandable. There's this odd tension between them, and I don't think it's written as well as it could be, and more importantly, I don't think it's ever really resolved, which is a problem.
Well, and that's part of the shift we have here, because those conflicting moments where they're not complementing each other, we had conflict in the beginning because they were learning each other, and we had a
Yes.
cultural difference. We had he just didn't understand women.
We had just they're young.
We
They're
had
just plain
she
young.
really didn't understand men. You
Yeah.
know, we they were younger, they were dumb. But now every time he writes their conflict, he's a simp and she's a bitch.
Yeah.
Is what it is, and it's just so out of place. But when he writes them working together, it's exactly what we were working up towards. So it just to push that storyline where Barrelane becomes a problem and all of the other things happen. I don't know. I just feel like not only could we have done it without the conflict there, but it would have shortened the story. He talked about it getting too long. It would have
Hmm.
shortened the story.
Hmm. Big time. Yeah. Which which is the biggest problem with this whole arc of Perrin, really to the very end of the story, almost to the very end anyway. There's a little bit better later, but almost to the end of the story, Perrin, who was my favorite character for the first half of the series, kind of falls apart.
Mm-hmm.
And this is kind of the point where Matt started to become much more appealing to me, was around A Crown of Swords. Uh, his storyline there and was really good, which is why it was so annoying he's not in this book. But then it picks up
See,
really well in the next book.
I thought he started really taking off in book 3 when he leaves to go save the girls.
Yeah,
That was kind of where his character really takes off.
right. Because he's under the influence of the dagger for pretty much the whole time we've seen him before then.
Mm-hmm.
So we don't actually know who Matt is, except for that little bit that we see of him in the Two Rivers and Bearlawn, because of the dagger. So that's him finally showing us who Matt really is,
Mm-hmm.
which is cool.
Yeah, so it makes it so out of place, and it you know, you could even had Barrelane still trying to play a game, but Faile and Perrin being like the
Yeah, we're not playing.
ideal couple, and Barrelane can't keep messing up the plans because she hates losing.
Yes.
You know, and she could have been an antagonist instead of a
Yeah,
tryst.
an
And
accidental antagonist is what I think she's supposed to be, but
mhm.
it doesn't really work. Um, and there's a moment, and I think it's later in this book where Faile gets it because her and Bearlane have this interaction where Faile realizes, oh, you don't understand Perrin at all. And Bearlane is offended because that's her thing. She is a people reader and a male manipulator. That's what she does. That is how she has maintained the autonomy of her country.
Well, Barrelane's the good guy version of Lanfear.
Mm,
You know, we talk about the same person raised in two different situations. One could end up being a productive member of society, and the other a psychopath. That's exactly that situation. She has the same exact characteristics of Lanfear, but she's didn't fall to the shadow. She just became a queen of a small nation and uses the exact same powers to get her way, and still hates it when they don't work.
yeah. Bearlane is operating under the more kind of classic ideas of the nobility, which is that um, this is who noblemen are, and uh, affairs don't end marriages so long as you uphold your duty to wife and children, which is what wives are all about, is producing heirs. And that's basically the assumption that Bearlane is operating under, even though she saw Perrin before anyone ever called him Lord Perrin or Lord Golden Eyes or Lord Elvira.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't. It just does feel like in this book particularly, because Jordan had the viewing of the Eagle and the Falcon with Min, he
Yeah.
felt the need to just make it happen,
Yeah.
and so he
Yeah.
kind of just forced one. He kind of forced the square peg
Yeah.
into
And
a
that was a
square.
long time ago.
Yeah,
So
it
he
was like
set
book
that up a
one, wasn't
long
it?
time ago.
No,
Yeah.
book two. No, it
I
was the
thought it was
beginning
in
of book
Bearlawn.
3.
Okay.
Beginning of book 3, wasn't it Min talking to Perrin when they were in the
Yes,
camp?
because she sees it when he decides to go, so she thinks it's important. And the vision first happens because he says he's going and he's going to meet the Falcon.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yep.
Because Berylane is the hawk because that's on her sigil because she's a descendant of Hawkwing. Anyway,
Mm-hmm.
all right. Well, that's all I got.
That's all I
Next
got.
time, next time we'll see how quick we can go through. I think there's a couple of chapters of just kind of isolated storyline stuff before it gets to Rand, and then we'll see what we have to say about Rand.
Yeah, and those we can probably go over quick in the main section, but some of those isolated things are where we actually get more of our spoiler talk
Mhm.
because they're setups for something way
Yeah.
later.
Yeah. All right. Well, we will see y'all then.
All right. Happy Friday, everyone.